Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the W.O.W Show. If you're new here, I'm Vernaire Bass, and I am your hostess with the mostest. First off, let me wish all of the amazing mothers in the West Indies a happy, happy, happy Mother's Day. And of course, a special shout out to my own beautiful mother, Irene, holding it down over there in the UK. So last week, on the first episode of W.O.W, I spilled the beans about my personal W.O.W journey. And honestly, before the show, I was so nervous to share my story, but facing my fears was definitely worth it because the support and love that I've received from all of you has just been incredible. Big thanks to my interviewer, Vernaire Richardson, for not just grilling me, but also for seeing that I was more than worthy to be the first guest on my own show. But hey, enough about me. Today, we are unveiling the story of my very first guest on the W.O.W Show, the fabulous Anguillian businesswoman, Tahirah Banks-Webster. Good afternoon, Tahirah, and how are you?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm doing great. I'm doing
Fantastic. So
fantastic.
how are things over there in LA, right?
LA, Los Angeles is beautiful. As you can see, it's sunny out. So it's a good vibe. And let me kind of adopt the protocol already established and wish all of the mothers out there in the Caribbean, in the US, and wherever you're celebrating Mother's Day today. Wish you guys a happy Mother's Day. Yeah, and a special Mother's Day shout out to my own mom, Donna. What's up, mommy? Happy Mother's Day to you.
Indeed. So, guys, as you know, grab your favorite drink, settle into a comfy seat, and join us for another show filled with inspiration, empowerment, and sisterhood. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Welsh. So, guys, if you're just tuning in now, you are tuning into the W.O.W Show with me, Vernaire Bass, your host, and of course, my first ever guest on the W.O.W Show, Miss Tahirah Banks-Webster. Again, for those who are just tuning in, how are you this afternoon, Tahirah?
I'm doing great. Like I said, it's a sunny day here in Los Angeles. The weather's perfect, and I'm feeling good.
Great. So,
What
guys,
about
I
you?
want to start off the W.O.W Show by really making it feel like we're taking a personal journey with our guests, right?
Mhm.
So, I want to take things a little bit back to Tahirah's childhood. We're jumping straight into it. Tahirah, both of your parents are pretty well known in Anguilla.
Mm.
Your mom, Donna Banks, was the youngest director of tourism, and your dad is the legendary singer and songwriter Banky Banks. However, they
Mhm.
split up a little bit before you were born. So, can you
Around
tell us
that
a little
time, right?
bit about your childhood and what it was like growing up in Anguilla?
Yeah, my childhood in Anguilla was bliss, to be honest. For the most part, I had the love of both my parents. I had the love of excuse me, my brothers, and I have a large family, extended family of cousins and aunts and uncles, and it was just a good vibe, lots of fun, and just a real island girl upbringing, if I could say so. Playing cricket and going to the beach and climbing trees and doing all the things kids these days aren't really getting into. Yeah, it was fun.
Fantastic. So now that you're in LA, and obviously you're saying you're a Anguillian girl at heart, what's one of the things
Mm.
that you miss the most when you're in LA about Anguilla?
Most of all, it's my family for sure. I miss, being able to drive down by my mom's house and just kind of sit down on the balcony and look out at St. Martin. I miss playing with my friends. We play basketball on a Sunday and a Monday and a Friday morning. I miss fried fish. I miss a lot. I miss a lot about home. I definitely miss the food and my family though, for sure. Number one, my family, my nieces. Yeah.
Awesome. So, like I said, we're jumping straight into it.
Mhm.
You mentioned to me in a previous conversation that you wasn't really into school that much when you're younger. It wasn't really a priority for you. So tell me, what were you interested in when you were growing up if school wasn't the main priority?
Yeah, well, I always loved to read, and I still do. I always loved reading and immersing myself in stories. But my passions were music. first of all, music. I played drums and piano, and I sang. I dabbled in the guitar and the bass. It was playing football. You know, the Americans say soccer. It was just riding bike and doing just being a kid. You know, doing fun stuff, making jokes and entertaining, and just not school for sure. Yeah, I wasn't the most studious. I'll say that. Yeah.
So did your parents ever put pressure on you to be a little bit more studious, or you were just like rebellious at that time?
No, I think one of the things I appreciate most about both my parents is that they never pushed me in one direction or the next. They always allowed me to be who it is I wanted to be, and they never said you have to do this or you have to do that. Obviously, you'd want your child to get good grades, but I was doing a lot of different things, and I wasn't like flunking school. You know, obviously, I wasn't like being held back, but I was not. I certainly was not operating at my full potential in academics for sure. Definitely not.
And one of the cool things, obviously, you mentioned being a very outdoorsy girl, maybe a little bit tomboyish as well. But your
Mhm,
dad, Banky Banks, who's a well-known musician in Anguilla, he also
mhm.
owns a beach bar called the Dune Preserve.
Yeah.
So how do you think that by spending time at the Dune Preserve and stuff like that, do you think that really nurtured your creative side of things or your love for music?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Being down there, that was my thing. You know, my parents were not together when I never knew them together. I don't know exactly when they split up, but I never knew them together. But I had the best of both worlds because I had the structure and discipline that my mother provided and created for us at home, that reliability, and then I had the freedom and creativity that was my dad. You know, and being at the dune and being able to just get up and play music spontaneously and him just allowing me to do whatever it is I felt like I wanted to do to express myself creatively was very, very, very useful to me growing up. My imagination ran wild. You know, I was very comfortable playing alone. And so I spent lots of days just exploring and just being in my own thoughts, to be honest. Yeah.
So what instruments did you play as a child?
My first instrument was the drums, and I'll never forget the day my dad got me my first drum set. I may have been 5 or 6 years old. It was a red drum set, so I learned to play the drums, and I would go around with him playing the drums. And then I got a piano. I started playing the piano. My mom put me in music lessons, and I didn't like music lessons at all. So I dropped out of music lessons, and then I was just playing the piano by ear. I taught myself to play the piano by ear. My brother, I'll never forget it. He showed me like three chords: C, G, F, and once I got that, I just started creating, writing songs, like just tampering around. And I would my when I was at my dad's place, I would be playing the piano. You know, he'd have a piano there, or I'd bring mine down and he'd allow me to just play and just do whatever it is I wanted, you know, just express myself. Yeah. And as I got older, I really developed a profound passion for the piano. And yeah, that wasn't is my instrument. I have one in my spot here right now.
So why do you think that you weren't able to really work with a tutor as it relates to playing the piano? What was it about
Yeah.
going to lessons that turned you off?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that I'm not like a big fan of today. I live a very structured, then a fan of today. I can appreciate structure for creativity, right? But back then, as a child, I certainly was not a fan of, you know, structured creativity and having to learn all this and read the music. So once I learned to play it once, I would just memorize it, and I'd be at piano lessons just playing it by ear. I wasn't even looking at on the paper because I was just that disinterested in the theory of it. I wish I did, to be honest. I wish I did kind of like double down on that, but back then I wasn't. It just wasn't of interest to me.
So can you read music or are you still playing by
No,
ear?
I can't read music at all. I play completely by ear, and yeah, right by ear. And I mean, it's been useful. I'll say that, but yeah, I wasn't interested in the reading part of it.
That's really
Not sure.
interesting, you know. And what's
Mhm.
also interesting is that your first instrument was the drum. So have you stepped completely away from the drums, or is it something that you're able to play as well?
Well, first of all, drums playing the drum, that's a fun instrument to play. I say that. It's especially as a kid, it's fun. Once I got into the piano, I played the drums less because you also have to know, like, with a piano, you can put your headset on and you can play. With a drum set, I can't necessarily drums are loud, right? So with a drum set, you're just kind of banging away. So if I see a drum somewhere right now, I'll sit and I'll play around on it. But I'm certainly a lot better at the piano. That is the instrument that I really I put my heart into, and I was able to. Piano has like melody, you can create melodies and all sorts of different things on the piano. So I was then able to transition into songwriting, and so that's how I really got stuck with the piano. Yeah, how I stuck with why I stuck with the piano.
Fantastic. So, guys, if you're just tuning in now, you are tuned into the Wow Show with your host, Vernaire Bass. And today I'm so happy to be here with my first guest, Tahirah Banks-Webster. And so far, she's been telling us a little bit about her childhood growing up in Anguilla, climbing trees, playing basketball, expressing herself creatively. And now we're going to jump a little bit more into her life as a teenager. So,
Mhm.
Miss Tahirah, at the tender age of 15, after
Working
having
with
such a fantastic childhood in Anguilla, you decided that you wanted to move to Houston, Texas. And as I was telling everybody last week, when I had to move to the UK,
Mhm.
I really hated that transition. So, why did you take it upon yourself to ask your parents to move to the USA? And of course, did they agree with you straight away?
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question. So while I was having that phenomenal childhood in Anguilla, I also had the privilege of traveling to the US often, right? In the summers, I would go to Houston very often. So I developed a strong affinity for Houston. I had an aunt there. My brother was there. And so I just liked it. I liked it a lot. And I was also being exposed to different things. And I told you about the creativity, and I didn't say it, but I was, meeting and interacting with a lot of cool people, even at my dad's spot. And so my perspective on life and what I wanted for life it was it was not very consistent with what I was seeing in Anguilla. And in my head, by this time I'm in first, second form, in my head and the dreams that I have kind of played out in my head and I'm not telling anyone, I'm thinking, if I go to Houston, like I could this life can be a reality, because I don't necessarily see that for myself here in Anguilla. And so I spoke to my mom because she was my primary caregiver. I spoke to my mom, and I obviously would have spoken to my brother about it, and there would have been conversations. It wasn't something they were like, "Yeah, you're gone," but I think that I honestly can't remember all of the conversation, but I just think that I've always had the freedom and flexibility to pursue whatever it is I wanted. My family blessed me. I'm very privileged in that regard. And so when I said that, they, I guess, trusted it was good for me. I don't know. They just did. But I'm grateful that they did. And I'm grateful that my brother, at 29 years old, took in his 15-year-old sister, him and his wife, and helped me through those final years of high school.
Yeah, and especially the fact that your brother was 29 years old. Did he have children at the time?
No, he didn't have kids just yet, but he was young and he was just finishing up school, and he was in a very early phase in his life, so that was a really big sacrifice for him, and I'm grateful and indebted to him like forever for that, for that sacrifice. But he's always been like kind of like a dad to me too. So yeah.
And you think your brother also moved to America at a young age as well. Do you think that that influenced your decision to leave Anguilla so early?
Yeah, yeah, because my dad was my dad and I loved him and I had a great relationship with my dad, but I also had two older brothers, the eldest of which between my mother and father. The eldest of which was 14 years older than me, and that's Olaide, and then Omari, he's 7 years older than me. And both of them, so there's a gap, and both of them really raised me like a little sister, but still like their little child. So they very much protected me, and and I looked up to them a lot. And so my brother, he was so much older. I in a way kind of idolized him when I was younger, and so I wanted to be with him. Yeah.
And you also mentioned in our previous conversation as well
Mhm.
that moving to Houston was almost like a reset for you. It was like a shift,
Yeah.
especially as
Yeah.
it relates to your education, because as we discussed
Mhm.
earlier, in Anguilla, you were more focused on the creative side of things. But
Yeah.
when you moved to Houston, it's almost like you had a tunnel vision and you really wanted to achieve academic success. So,
Yeah.
what was that shift for you in your
Yeah.
mindset?
Yeah. I think, I had the dream in my mind of what it is I wanted to be for a very long time, even before moving. Primary school, high school, it was shifting, but I knew that I wanted a lot from my life. And I also was real with myself that these C's and D's and these that 27% in biology isn't gonna get you far, and I felt in a lot of ways like I had already had this identity for myself in Anguilla. And in my young mind, I felt like if I moved to Houston, I could just be a different person. I could just, I could be, I could do what it is it took to be exactly who it is I wanted to be. And so I did that. And when I went there, I was just like, yo, I'm going to double down on my education. And I did. Well, it was actually non-negotiable with my brother because the freedoms that my parents afforded me, my brother did not. The minute I moved in, he said, "That's your PlayStation. Come bring it right here. Yeah, put it right there." I said, "Put it where?" He said, "Right there." Like it was in the cabinet. Why are we putting it there? Because I'm a customer. I play PlayStation on weekdays, on weekends. He says, so that only comes out on vacation. I said, what does that mean?
Vacation.
That's it. So no, and that was a shock for me. No video games until vacation. That was a big thing. But he certainly created more structure around my life that particularly for like my academic success. Yeah. And even musically, because then I was going to church more often. And church in the US is very different to church in the Caribbean. I went to the Church Without Walls, Pastor Ralph Douglas West. Shout out to the Church Without Walls family. And I was going to church like 2-3 times a week. And I was playing music with I was the pianist for the church, for the youth ministry in the church. And so I was really not just immersed in my education, but I was immersed in church, and I was also I was just immersed in music. So that was a blessing for me for sure.
Isn't it ironic that you had so much more freedom in Anguilla with your parents, and then here's your
Mhm.
29-year-old brother laying down laying down
Yeah.
the law?
Mhm. He's a
But you
serious
also
man. Yeah.
but you also mentioned that during that period of your life that you were very much a loner as well. Like you had
Yeah.
tunnel vision, but you really weren't trying to keep that many friends. And obviously you mentioned that going to church was a big part of your life then. Why did you decide to isolate yourself in a way at that time?
Yeah. I think it was also like I was having that fresh start, but you're still a 15-year-old kid, and you're in a different place where you talk different and you wear your hair different and you look different, and it is very clear that you're different. And what any teenager will tell you right now is that nobody wants to be different. You don't figure that out until later in life that being different is actually the hack. You don't want to be the same. I didn't want to be tall. I didn't want to have natural hair. I didn't want to be who I was in some ways, but I was so grateful to be there. And I felt like, okay, I'm not necessarily as cool right now, but let me just double down. Let me just get these good grades. Let me just focus. This is just a period. I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to be great. I'm going to create, build myself into who it is I want to be. And it's going to, in my mind, I always figured it's going to work out on the other end. Yeah.
And the irony is that a year later, you returned to Anguilla, and Mr. Hero, the tomboy, had returned to from the states,
Yeah. From the
wearing
States, from
makeup
foreign.
and ripped jeans, and everybody was
Yeah.
looking at you like, "Who are you?" What was that like
Yeah.
for you when you returned to Anguilla, and everyone was looking at you like, "Girl, you've changed."
I'm not gonna lie, I was shook. I was shook because I wanted to be this new person, but I also knew I was very frightened. I remember like going up to the library and like about to cross because in Anguilla school finishes like end of June, July, but in Houston school is done like late May, early June. So there was that period, and I went home, and I remember feeling like you know, like I'm nervous because I don't know, but you know, it's we're all kids, and after a couple of jokes, oh, you guys never rip up pants, girl. After a couple of jokes, your friends are still your friends, you know. So and my friends from Anguilla are my friends to this day, you know, many of them, yeah.
That's fantastic. And you know,
Mhm,
sometimes coming from small islands, like both of us do, because obviously I'm
mhm,
from Montserrat, you're from Anguilla. Do
mhm,
you think that sometimes your local community can almost place you in a box based on who you were, maybe before you
mhm.
left, instead of who
Yeah,
you want to be per se?
yeah. In a way, yes, I think that people will always have their judgments of you and who it is you are. And I'll also say that we get to determine, like, no one can put you or I in a box. Only we can put ourselves in a box. And so if it is you succumb to, get what you got in them rip up pants. Well, I just wore them the next day. And then after a while, it's like, oh, here she go in her rip up pants. Like, it's not a thing anymore. But if you kind of succumb to the pressure and the narrative that anybody's trying to kind of create for you in the box anyone is trying to put you in, then yeah, you'll stay in that box. But if you're very confident in who it is you are and who it is you want to be and where it is you want to go, I think that you just have to find the courage to create your own, not box, but your own sphere, and exist in that. And eventually when people see that, well, this is who this mofo is, you know, she gonna wear them rip up jeans and this is just who she's gonna be, then they just come to accept it. That's just who you are. You have to have
So
that
my
courage
next
yourself.
question was actually going to be, what would you say to a young woman growing up in Anguilla, growing up in a
Mhm,
small island like we have, who's trying to find their identity and don't
mhm.
have the luxury of moving to Houston, Texas? What would you
Yeah.
say to them in terms of truly embracing who they are? Because I know, especially pursuing some things like entrepreneurship, or even being a journalist, or
Mhm.
even pursuing like more creative roles like the ones that we do,
Yeah,
they're kind of frowned upon in our smaller communities, especially
that's right.
even when I went to the UK. Ethnic minorities, if you said to your parents, say you want to be a fashion designer or you want to be an interior decorator,
Yeah.
or, you know, they look at you like,
Oh my
so
god.
if it's not lawyer, doctor, or
Yeah.
accountant, it's a no. So what do you
Yeah.
say to a young
Just screw up.
person who's obviously now being exposed to social media and all of those
Mhm,
options that are available to young people, AI, technology? What would you say to
mhm,
someone growing up in the
mhm.
Caribbean about really pursuing their dreams and following their true identity?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's something that a lot of, not just young women, but women middle age, older, we're always trying to reinvent ourselves, right? And we should always evolve ourselves. But particularly as a young woman, when you're in those formative years where everything everyone says somehow seems to matter, I would say, first of all, being different is okay. There's nothing wrong with being different, and actually it's important that you fall in love with being different because there's so much sameness in the world, right? And so you want to stand out. Standing out is not a bad thing, and as hard as it feels when you are standing out, what you hate about yourself is what long term you're gonna end up loving about yourself, and those are gonna be the differentiators that when people look at you, they're like, you're different. You know, you're not just one in a stack of the same. In terms of the creative fields, I'm deeply passionate about that because I personally have always chosen a path that includes some creativity. I'm in business, but our work is very creative. Everything I do today has built upon the skill sets that I've had, whether it's piano, songwriting, all of that. I incorporate that into my work, and I would say that go online. This is a one time I'll say go online and look at the world and understand that it is possible. Just know it is possible. And the other thing is I would have a message for, I think, the quote unquote powers that be and the persons that set up the frame that young people live in, that we have to foster, we have to promote creative spaces because in the, like, that is what is going to differentiate everybody today. You know, AI, chat GPT, all of these different all the new technology coming on stream. If you are the same, like, robotic thinking and robotic thought and behavior is it like, that's done. Like, you can't think like a robot and win because we can just type it into a computer now. So the creativity that you foster when you're younger, that allows you to think outside of the box when you're older and not give a response like chat gpt, but give a response that sounds like a human being that understands empathy and that understands human relationships would give. Yeah, so embrace different and dive into creative careers. Like, I cannot begin to stress this. Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing. And I think most people, because even when you go into business and marketing, you're always looking for that unique selling point, right? And I
Hmm.
truly believe that as an individual, your USP is you. It's
Yep.
you being authentically yourself because there could be no one else like you.
Hmm.
And like you said, technology and everything is great. Chat GPT is great, but what it lacks is personality. What it lacks is
Hmm.
empathy, life experience, and everything that
Yep.
goes along with it. So speaking of life experience, obviously by
Hmm.
buckling down academically, you were able to, get a place into college. So what did
Hmm.
you pursue? What subjects did you pursue at college, and how was that journey for you?
Yeah, I went to business school, and it was an interesting journey. The structure and discipline that I had when I initially moved to the US, and I was very focused on getting my grades up. In college, I was like, well, you know what? I don't want to just kind of be at home all the time, which was my choice. I don't want to just do that anymore. I want to like not necessarily experience college, but I want to be just I just want to do what I want to do. I don't want to feel so rigid all the time. And so I had a few years where I got some good grades, and then after that I had some periods where I struggled, and I was just it was a I'll say university for me. To this day, I if you ask me what did you learn in this class or that class, I cannot tell you. But for the most part, I cannot tell you. But what it taught me was resilience, because when I was in university, I started businesses, and so it taught me to overcome. I'll say that my college experience taught me to overcome. But I went to business school. Yes, Bauer College of
Yeah,
Business.
and speaking of business, and also always having entrepreneurship in your blood,
Mhm.
with the assistance of relatives at the age of 18, you started your
Mhm.
first business.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the business failed after 6 months. But can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how it influenced the way that you view entrepreneurship from then and even now?
Yeah, yeah. So I wrote the business plan at 18, but I finally got everything off the ground by the time I was like 20. And I had gotten family to give some investments in the business, some small investments, but it was money regardless. And then it failed. The business failed. And I think the lesson for me, your question was, how does that influence how I do business
So first
today?
of all, what was the business, and then how did it fail?
It was a recording studio. It was a recording studio off of Stella Link in in Houston, Texas. It was in a warehouse off of Stella Link, and it failed because I was not a good business person. It failed because I did not. I thought that once I had money, whether it's raising money from family or I got a loan, once I had money and I had equipment and I had a location, that boom, I'm going to be making money. I'm going to be successful in business. But that is like baseline. That's not even like no. And so I hadn't done enough market research. I certainly was not engaging in sales. I was just there in the studio for a lot of times, and I got like one or two clients, but for the most part I didn't take enough time to understand or to develop a business model that would make sense. And if I had thought about it deeply, I probably wouldn't have even started that business, if I could be honest, because the numbers just don't. It was never going to make sense, right? It was never going to make sense. But what I took away from that going forward was one. Don't take money to start a business. So in every business I've ever started since then, I've never had a loan, and I don't go out raising funding, anything like that. Thoughtful. Our business today is completely bootstrapped. Um, but my takeaway was establish the viability of the idea. right? You don't need money to establish the viability of the idea. You need to go out and call people and see if like someone is willing to pay you money to do what it is you say you're going to do. And we see a lot of people online even today in the e-commerce space. They will they're selling a shirt. They don't print those shirts. They have a wait list, pre-order. If a lot of people pre-order, then is a cool idea. If no one pre-orders, then you haven't printed a bunch of shirts, and now you're trying to figure out how to sell them. So I think that was the biggest takeaway from me, like going forward. You got to sell. You have to surround yourself with a solid. You have to have a solid business partner who brings as much value to the relationship as you do, and you have to, before you even buy the equipment, before you go and get the studio, before you do all of those feel good things, because if you're honest with yourself, they are feel good things. And I've made some of those mistakes more than once. Before you do that, just establish if the idea even makes sense, if it's going to work, if someone is willing to pay you for it. And that was my biggest takeaway from that failure. And then in university, because now trying to make the studio work, I was going to the studio, I was skipping class. So I didn't only crash out with the studio, but I failed the entire semester. And I went from the dean's list, and I was placed on academic probation, and yeah, it was not a good thing. And so that experience though for me was foundational to who it is I am today, because that was the first time I feel like I was in an environment where my family was not obligated to save me, and they were not obligated to help me. This was my mess I made, and now I had to fix it. And so I did. And it was hard, and it was, it didn't happen overnight, but I set out within myself to say, hey, you're going to get your grades back up. You had a great GPA. Now you are on academic probation. When you graduate, you have to have at a minimum of 3.0, because you know where you were. You messed this up, but this is your target. And I did. You're going to graduate college because, you've come too far, and your mother expects you to graduate college. So you're going to graduate college, because you will not hear the end of this if you don't, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so for me, that was, I had to learn to sell, because right after that I had to get an actual job. Right. I had to learn to sell. I went out, I got a job with the school newspaper. And as I've shared with you before, I had the opportunity to decide, well, when you're getting this job, you have to get a job. You can get a job that pays you a flat $650 every month, no matter what you do. Okay. Or you can get a job that at the school newspaper where you're selling ads, and you don't get paid any guaranteed money. You only get paid a commission on what you sell. I said, I'll take that one. I'll take the one where I get a commission, because it felt like I was still being my own boss. And so with that experience, I learned then to sell. And I had to learn to sell, because if I did not sell, I could not buy lunch. I could not eat. And I couldn't keep going back to my mom for money. So it was certainly a teachable experience overall. And from that failure, which felt like, I'll tell you, I was telling my husband the other night, at that time I felt like I was going to die. I wanted to die. I did. I definitely, I felt like, why am I even on earth? Like, you're such a mess up, and it's natural to feel that way. But from that experience, I learned that I could do better. I could overcome. Like, I could make a mistake, I could fall flat on my face, and I could get back up, and I could win. So yeah, that
Absolutely. And I think the thing about life is sometimes when we feel like we're at rock bottom, we're not really at rock bottom. I think
mm-mm.
that we're just on a different rung on the staircase to success. And then you're
Yep.
not necessarily starting from foundation, because one thing that I observed during you just telling your story there is that
Mhm.
obviously when you first arrived in Houston from Anguilla, you had to have that tunnel vision, especially as it
Mhm.
relates to your education, to make sure that you got into college. And I think that you
Mhm.
pulled from that strength back then to be able
Mhm.
to complete college, and
That's right.
then to be able to then, pick yourself up and get a job,
Mhm.
and then to actually put yourself
J-O-B.
in a position where you can fail over and over again. And then obviously
Yeah.
working in sales, it's very thankless, and most of the times you're hearing the word no.
No.
So how do you think, by working in sales, that has also made you a better businesswoman as well?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. Uh, I've always been I don't believe in no. Even when I was younger, when my parents would tell me no, I didn't hear no. I just heard, I'll just ask again later.
Not
Like
now.
I've never believed in no, and I've never believed that there was anything that I wanted that I could not get. I still don't believe that, right? I feel like if I want something, I can work hard and I can find a way to get it, right? Legally. And so sales was perfect for me because in a way I had been selling in the past, just that I didn't know it was sales. I was just being relentless. And so when I went into sales, getting the rejection was hard. It was hard because no, this was just like straight up people hanging up the phone on you, people telling you please don't call back. That was not easy at all, but it was practice. And today I use it. I've had clients that it took me 3 years to get to do business with them, but it's because I knew, like, at some point in time you're going to say yes. And from that experience I learned that you got to show up. You have to be consistent, you have to show up. And when it comes to sales and when it comes to persuasion, you have to bring the energy to every conversation. You have to bring the energy to every situation because people vibe off the energy. Some sales people didn't necessarily even want to advertise in the paper. This was when digital was just coming on stream real big in the US, and people didn't even want to necessarily advertise in the paper because they were hearing about all these other cool things they could do. But some people just advertise with me because they like my energy. So
Mhm. So, guys, thank you very much to everybody who has been tuning in so far. I'm seeing all your
mhm,
comments and I'm trying to bring them up on the screen. I hope that you're enjoying the conversation, but we're going to take a little break and we'll be right back
mhm.
in about 10-20 seconds. So thank you so much, guys, for still rocking with us. I hope that you're enjoying Tahirah's story. Tahirah is a fantastic businesswoman straight out of Anguilla. And so far, we've been discussing her childhood. We've been discussing her brave move from Anguilla to Texas at the tender age of 15, and then
Mhm.
starting up her business around 18 or 20, business failing, and then having to go out and find a new job. I've learned so much so far during the conversation, and she's dropping so many gems. But now we are going to jump into a very sensitive subject about
Mhm.
losing a loved one. I
Mhm.
lost my dad and my grandmother a couple years ago, and that was really
Mhm.
my first time of
Mhm.
encountering grief, right? And it was
Mhm.
such an emotional roller coaster because I swear to you, sometimes I was happy about something, but I wasn't sure if I should be happy because I'm still grieving, and
Yeah.
you should really be sad right now and things like
Mhm.
that. So I know for you, unfortunately, you lost your childhood friend and your
Mhm.
best friend Sil in a car
Mhm.
crash.
Yeah.
Um, what was that experience like for you? So this was around 2013 as well.
Mhm.
And how are you coping with that loss even to this day?
Yeah. So Sil passed away when in 2013. I just graduated college and I was back home in Anguilla visiting for the summer. And at that time, music was still my primary focus. I've always wanted to own a business and build my music career. In my mind, that's how it always was going to work out. But music was my focus at that time. Came home for the summer and didn't leave because he passed away, and that experience just very much jolted me because up to that point I had lost my grandmother when I was like in class 6, and but I had never like I didn't think that like somebody like your friend could die. Like I didn't know that that was a thing, right? And I hadn't lost someone that close to me until then, and certainly not a best friend. And so that experience then was just like I just felt like everything was just I can't even describe it, to be honest. It just felt like everything was just kind of falling down around me in a lot of ways, for a period of time there. But for sure, like music was off the table after that. So it was the one that really, even though I was playing my dad and what's not, when I was younger, I wasn't like in the band, and how a lot of people my age and stuff knew about me was because of him, because he was always like talking about what a great singer I was, what a great songwriter I was, and he was putting me in this band he was in, and we were, that was our thing, you know. And so when he passed, I just didn't want to do music anymore. It just hurt too much. And so I said, you know, I'm here in Anguilla. I don't want to leave because I don't want to be alone. By this time I've been away from home for about 10 years now, and I don't want to be, I've lived away from home for about 10 years now. So I didn't want to be away from home. And so I stayed, and I just doubled down on my music. You know, I just doubled down on not my music, sorry, on business. And that was my thing, because he was someone who, and to this day that's what drives me. He was someone who just believed, and he was very optimistic, and he made me feel like I was somebody, especially when I was younger, even when I was like 14, 13, 15, and I was still trying to find myself. He always made me feel special, and it was never sexual. You know, sometimes boys give you attention because they're into you. Like,
Yeah.
it was completely platonic. He was like my brother, but he was not my blood brother, but he loved me, and I didn't know why, but I just felt love with him, and I just felt he made me feel special and important. And when he died, I just felt like I'm alive and he's not, and I have a responsibility to be something, because he believed I would be. So I'm going to be something.
So what
Yeah.
business were you pursuing at that time? And when you said that you really, put your head down and focused on your business, what did that look like in reality?
Yeah, what that looked like, it was marketing, because I graduated with my degrees in accounting, marketing, some minors there. But it was marketing, and it was me going around with an iPad, with a broken iPad. My computer was busted. I had no money. Going around with a broken iPad and stealing credit from my mother's phone, like transferring credit from her digital phone to my phone, to be able to make calls and just try to get people to do business with me. And when I was, I think I shared this with you. I was low bad, because I was just trying to do. I was just trying to make something happen. I just wanted to sell at least one person, and I was doing that for a minute. And my aunt, she came and she saw me, and she said, you know, she's seen me, my aunt Jassy, she sees me grinding, she sees me going after it, and she wrote me a check, and she said, I want you, don't buy a car, but I need you to do something with this for yourself. And this isn't like an investment or nothing. This is just, your grandfather was an entrepreneur, and he would want you to have this, because you're going to, I see you're not giving up. And so I took that money and I bought a piano, not to pursue music, but because I knew what are the assets that I have available to me. So I got this iPad, and I can sell, and I can also sing. So I was playing my piano. I bought a big piano. I was lugging that around, and I was playing it in the night in the hotels and the restaurants to earn money. So I bought the piano with the money she gave me. And then I bought a laptop once I got some more money in. So no, I didn't have to use an iPad anymore. You walk around with a MacBook now, you look like you're important. You look like you're doing
Doing
something.
things.
Yeah. And my presentations could look a little better. And so I just what it looked like for me was, it was emotionally very painful. I was completely detached from just about everything and everybody, but my tunnel vision kicked in on another level, because I just felt like I gotta be something. I can't be nothing, because he's not here, and I know he would give anything to have life. So as long as I can breathe, I'm gonna do something with my life. I'm gonna be somebody.
That's fantastic. And obviously, just almost like a year later, you met your husband, Gino, and then you guys have gone on now to obviously launch your own business together. Tell us about how you met Gino, because I feel like Sil played a little bit of a role in that too.
Yeah, yeah. So Gino, short and sweet. Lord, there's so much tangles here. Gino's sister was dating Sil when they were in high school. And even when I was in Angola, I saw Sil just obsessively pursuing Gino's sister. And so they were together. And so Sil was like a big brother for Gino, but I had never met him. I never met Gino. I just heard about him because Sil would always talk about him. Sil's sister was dating and then eventually married to my brother. And so we would always be together separately, but Gino and I had never met. We just heard about each other. When Sil passed, he had moved on in terms of relationships, and he actually was, when he died, he was dating and had a baby, a son, by Gino's then best friend, right? So I met Gino because I would be going to visit my godson, right? Sil's girlfriend when he passed, and the baby. So I'd be going to visit, and Gino would be there as well. And so they'd be hanging out, and then he just sent me a random text sometime in like May of 2014, May or June of 2014, some nonsense. And yeah, we've been together ever since.
It's such a roundabout story, but like I was saying to you in early conversations, I feel like all of this time still just had your back. And
Yeah,
then here you
yeah,
are meeting your husband as well. And obviously things move pretty quickly for you and Gino because you moved in quite quickly and within 6 months you started your business together. So what drove the creation of your marketing and tech agency Thoughtful, which
right,
has now become a multi-million dollar revenue
right,
generating business?
right. So it wasn't called Thoughtful then, right? We rebranded
Okay.
as Thoughtful in 2017. We moved in, yeah, after 6 months. I wouldn't necessarily recommend to any young girl to do that. I'm just put the disclaimer out there for all the mothers listening on Mother's Day, but we did that. And we just, like, Gino was young, I was young, and we were like, let's do this. He's always been someone that he was into technology, but he was just passionate about whatever he did. And I had never met a man with that level of passion before. And so it just kind of seemed logical for us to just go into business together. I was already doing stuff. And so we hopped into business together, and yeah, like, that was it. It just made sense.
Fantastic. And obviously, as life would have it, nothing's ever a straight line. Success, as you guys know, is not a straight line. So the ups
Yeah.
are always going to come and try to
Yeah.
rub your nose into it. So, okay, so you think that things are going good for you now. You got your husband, Gino. And then obviously in 2017, Hurricane Irma hit
Mhm,
Anguilla. And
mhm.
that caused you to have a business setback. But then, as
Yeah.
if that wasn't enough, in
Mhm,
2019, along came COVID. So how did you deal with both of those situations and
mhm.
the impact that they had on your business at the time?
Yeah. So Gino and I were struggling for, just a disclaimer, we were struggling for a lot of years before we even started to see any success. And I felt like one of the things we know, and we're always reflecting on how can we improve? What did we do wrong? We're even to this day, right? And especially to this day. And so we, at that time, we weren't just focused on the marketing company. We were just doing a bunch of different things. We had dabbled in like a water sports business. We were not as focused as we needed to be. And so when Hurricane Irma came, our resources were spread thin. And once the hurricane came, they were then obliterated, right? And so now, at that point in time, we were just like, we got to do something. Like, we have to focus, and we need to rebrand, and we need to ensure that this never happens again. And this is pre-COVID, of course. And so we did. We rebranded as Thoughtful, and we did things, we thought, in a manner that reflected who it is we wanted to be and the type of business it is we wanted to build. And we were doing that for a couple of years. And we had built up some clients, and we were doing good. We finally got an office in Anguilla, and right when we got that office, we moved into that office December 2019. I remember just painting, and everything was perfect. And then March of 2020, they say everything's shutting down because of COVID. And I said, what? And I remember like walking out in the parking lot and thinking, dear God, like, what are you doing? like what are you doing? Like, why are we going? Like, why is it always something, But I'm not big on like the pity party. So went back inside, and Gino and I, we went to the whiteboard, and we said, hey, we got to do something. Like, we can't change the circumstance. We cannot certainly stop a pandemic from coming to be. But what we can do is take action in any way we can. And so we supported the government in the development of the Beat COVID-19 .ai campaign, a platform, and from there we ended up building a vaccine management system for the government of Anguilla, the best and only, I think, vaccine management platform of its nature in the Caribbean, that made it such that Anguilla was able to vaccinate its residents at a faster click and in a more organized manner, and providing data on an incredible level to because of our work. And so through that adversity, I think for us it's always been, whether it was Irma or COVID, you got to take action. When you are down and out, life is going to happen. And I at the age of 35 now, I'm pretty confident that something will always come up, right? And that's not being negative, that's just a reality. It's always going to be something. Life is never going to be perfect, but how you train yourself to react to the some things that come up will really determine if you're going to end up just failing as an individual, or if you will continue to grow and be successful, because new levels bring new devils, so you just got to be prepared.
Absolutely. And I love that statement that at every level, there's definitely a different devil. But you guys have just continued on and, gone from strength to strength. And obviously, you recently started a podcast called Dreaming in Color, which is what gave us inspiration for this title of this week's episode. What inspired you to start Dreaming in Color, and what message do you and your husband hope to convey to your listeners?
Yeah. So Gina and I have been talking about starting a podcast for a minute. But we started Dreaming in Color because we have communicated with, we've worked with, we've had the privilege of knowing a lot of different people, and particularly people of color who look like us. And I think that, me personally, by virtue of my upbringing and the privilege of my experiences and all these different things, I've had access to information and mentorship and all of these different things that a lot of people that look like us, they don't get. And I credit my success to that privilege. I don't, there was a long period of time where I wanted to deny my privilege, but I am privileged, and that privilege, married with hard work, is what has put us in this position today. Gino has his privileges as well. And so we wanted to use Dreaming in Color to share that privilege, just to be honest, to share the insights and the perspectives that we have had the privilege of having access to. And by virtue of having access to those privileges, we are able to make the types of decisions and foster the types of relationships and make the types of moves that continue to keep us moving forward, continue to keep us moving upwards, because yeah, everyone doesn't have it. And that's just a reality.
And also the name of the podcast is very interesting as well. Why the name Dreaming in Color? What does that actually mean to you?
Well, it's interesting that you would ask that. We were sitting and having this discussion months back, and I told him, like, we were just saying it's just so exhausting that so much of what we see and do and the boxes that we're placed in are black and white. It's like it's either this or it's that. And so many people do not have the ability, or have not been blessed with the privilege, or do not have access to the information or the relationships to really dream the colorful dreams that they want to dream. And so they feel very pigeonholed into this box or the next box. And so we chose the name Dreaming in Color because your dream, like, who wants to dream black and white, right? You want to dream the most beautiful, vibrant, colorful, spectacular dream possible. And our podcast is designed to support people in that regard, dreaming and living the most colorful version of their lives.
And I know that with your podcast, you also touch on relationships as well. Um, why do you think it's important for us to really celebrate Black love and people who are actually doing this relationship thing? Well, obviously, I know that you guys are not perfect. I'm sure every relationship has its ups and downs, but you've
Yeah.
chosen to discuss relationships in your podcast as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we chose to talk about relationships. And it's interesting, those sessions actually do even better than some of the business sessions, right? But we chose to talk about relationships because I think that our culture today, is it's an interesting dynamic right now. But to be in love is sometimes seen as, for guys, he's too sprung. For girls, don't let no man control you. When the
Hmm.
reality is that we're better together, and partnership is the foundation of long-term success. Like, I could not be where I am today if I didn't have the partner that is Gino. He could not be where he was today if he didn't have the partner that is me. And so I think that it's important for us to discuss the reality of even one of the sessions we were talking about something personal related to our relationship, and someone messaged her like, yo, my husband and I experienced the same thing. We thought it was just us. It's like, no, like, this is real talk. But so often we give up on our relationships. We don't work on our relationships. We kind of just take a hands-off approach to our relationships because we think that we're unique in it. And the reality is, like, it all takes work, and we're all flawed. We all have our things to work through. But at the end of the day, relationship and black relationships, like us coming together, that is a powerful thing. Because when we are together, then, and we have that family unit developed in the manner it needs to be developed, then we can create a safer environment. We can create a nurturing environment for our children to have even more privileges than we have. So I think that growing up, I was having this conversation with a young lady the other day. Growing up, we are shamed. We are made to feel ashamed for having certain privileges. But our responsibility as people is to ensure that our children have privilege as well, that they, not that they're brats and that they're rude, but that they are given privileges that even we didn't have. They're given opportunities that even we didn't have. And I think that the best way to do that is through partnership and through community. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. And the next generation shouldn't have to go through the same pain and suffering that their parents went through. The goal is to
Mm-mm.
improve as you go along, right? So
Yep.
the last question, well,
Mhm.
the second to last question, is every
Okay.
guest who's going to come on the show, and you're the first person to answer this question after
Okay.
myself.
Mhm.
Can you share with us your wow moment in life, that defining moment when you knew that what you're doing was what you were born to do?
My wow moment. I think there have been a few wow moments for me. There have been a few wow moments, but I would say our work with COVID-19 was a wow moment for me, because impact is everything, right? Like, if you're just doing work but you're not really impacting people's lives, then I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but it's that much better when it impacts people's lives. So I think working with on the COVID-19 project, um, and just seeing how we were able to support the government, not just in managing the messaging, but in getting persons vaccinated and in opening up our island to begin to start generating, or to get the economy going again at a time when people desperately needed work. That was a wow moment for me, not necessarily because of our work, but because of the impact that I saw our work could have on our community. And so that felt like, yep, this is why we do what we do, because somebody's life is better because of it. Yeah. So that was a
Fantastic.
wow moment for me.
And if you can recommend a guest to be on the Wow Show, who would it be?
Put me in hot water here. No. If I could
I mean,
recommend,
you can recommend a couple. I'm trying to keep this show going and going and going. So, of course.
yeah, if I could recommend a guest, I would probably, I would recommend my friend. She's my friend. I recommend my friend Megan Cardi, or my other friend Shelia. Like, I'd recommend both of them. Those are my friends, but I'd recommend them just because Megan. I'll go with Megan. But I'll recommend her because I just have to choose one. Rogers, I love you, but I'll just choose one. I'd recommend Megan because she is doing what, coming from the Caribbean. She's the director of operations for a Hyatt corporate, the Americas. the
Mm-hmm.
Americas, not just like one thing, like the Americas. And
Fantastic.
she's 34 years old now, and she has been able to build her career. I've seen her in action, in real life, and I think that and she graduated ALHCS in Anguilla. You understand? She graduated our school, and how she has been able to grow her career. I think that her story would be of interest and would be of benefit to so many Caribbean people, particularly because, hospitality is a really big thing for us. Just to talk about how you can come from the Valley Anguilla, right? And you can create a career for yourself where you are working for one of the top hospitality brands in the world, in such a senior position for the Americas. So I think that her story would be super impactful for anybody. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, guys, we're very short on time. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been a fantastic episode. I'm so proud of my first episode and so proud of you, Tahirah, for sharing your fantastic journey. So,
Thank you
we're
for
back
inviting me.
here every Sunday at 4:30. Up next week, I am sitting down with the incredibly talented Colette Jones Chin. She's hailing from Guyana and she's now residing in St. Martin. She's not only a powerhouse in the world of visual arts, but also a respected theatre director and actress, and so much more. So join us to not just hear about her triumphs and her challenges in her career, but also her courageous fight in her ongoing battle with cancer. This has been a fantastic episode, and I hope that you've all had many wow moments. Set your alarms, come back here with us next week, Sunday, and every Sunday at 4:30 on 664 Connect Media and Radio Anguilla, and every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on ZJB Radio. Thank you so much again, Tahirah. And guys,
Thank
I
you.
hope that you all have a wow week, and I will see you next week. Thank you very much for watching. Take
Thank
care,
you.
guys.